Kyle Whittingham out at Utah, and you are going to hear the conversation about him coaching Michigan.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you all so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. It is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, the number one sports podcast network out there. Thank you all so much for helping make that the case. The Big 12 inks a private equity deal. What that means for the conference in college football. Washington State goes with somewhat of a big swing, and I am here for it. This episode brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. So Kyle Whittingham has retired. This was a pretty expected piece of news because there's no mystery about who the next head coach at Utah is going to be, because Utah has already named their next head coach in waiting. So on the one hand, yeah, and it's defensive coordinator Morgan Scalley, who's expected to follow the plan. That's not what the breaking news is here. Because I heard that and went, oh, well, yeah, I mean, that feels about right. No, the breaking news is that both Stuart Mandel and Nicole Auerbach have reported that Kyle Whittingham might be open to other coaching opportunities. Whoa, hold on. He'd be a perfect transition coach for Michigan. Absolute. Long term? No. He's 66 years old. I don't think he wants to do it forever, depending on what you view as long term. If long term is 5 years or more, Kyle Whittingham, by the way, from a culture standpoint, for the product that goes on the field, what Michigan's roster is and is likely to continue to be, and how they play football up there in the cold, yeah, Kyle Whittingham fits all of that. Defense, toughness, physicality, run game, that all feels very, very much like a good fit. The question is, would he want to go and take over that situation? Because there's no question that Utah in the Big 12 is closer to the college football playoff in the next 5 years than the Michigan Wolverines, pending who they hire as their head coach, because there is a lot to fix in Ann Arbor from a cultural standpoint. But if you're looking for somebody who's got a proven track record of doing just that, boy, Kyle Whittingham would be quite the hire. The question is, when the reports are from two different folks, as I mentioned, who are reliable, that he's open to other coaching opportunities, what does that mean? Does that mean he wants to go be an assistant in the NFL? Does that mean he wants to go advise a college football program on the defensive side of the ball? Does that mean he wants to be a head coach again? What exactly does that mean? Because I wonder, with both Utah and the Big 12, which I'll talk about later, taking on the private equity component, is that what really drove him away? Because he was, I think, set to retire last year. It's been pretty well reported that he really was. He named Morgan Scalley going into the 2024 season as his head coach in waiting. And then that season went off the rails. And that was going to be a sour taste in his mouth. They were 5-7, the heartbreaker at home to BYU. And yep, he's got to go out again with a loss to BYU. But Utah just went 10-2, which I will point out was my exact record prediction for them before the season. But I digress. Utah going 10-2, set to play in the Vegas Bowl where he's expected to coach. I think they will beat Nebraska 11-2. He's going out with a really, really good football season. But the program is in a good place. Is it just the private equity that would make him go, I don't want to be a part of that? But you do want to go try and fix the cultural mess that is the Michigan football program right now. He's certainly the guy to do it. He and Mike Gundy were the longest tenured head coaches in all of college football this year. When he retired earlier today, he was the longest tenured head coach because Mike Gundy was fired from Oklahoma State and Kyle Whittingham could leave whenever he wanted to. He could have stayed for as long as he wanted to. So if you're Michigan thinking about who your next head coach is going to be, I would call Kyle Whittingham and say, what's your interest level? What would your plan be for the program? Do you want, there have been, I don't want to say serious, but light discussions, interest, speculation, what have you, about Utah wanting to be a member of the Big Ten when the Pac-12 was imploding and they feel like the most Big Ten ready member of anybody in the Big 12, but the Big 12 or the Big Ten rather said, yeah, no, we're good with an 18 team conference, which is too many teams as it is. That's a different conversation. So maybe he's just looking for a different conference. Maybe he's worried about what the private equity is going to bring to Salt Lake City, or he just doesn't want to deal with that. But he's okay rebuilding the culture at Michigan because the actual football at Michigan is pretty good. Because you got to remember, while there are off the field issues that have to be navigated, he's a veteran. He knows exactly how to run a program, not doing it for the first time. He hasn't been away from the game from a really long time. He was just doing it. You know he can still coach. And maybe he looks at Michigan and goes, they're going to a bowl game with a chance to be a 10-win team. They have a quarterback that could be the number one pick in the NFL draft one day. Boy, that seems like a really fun place to coach. Maybe he feels, because history would tell you this is the case, that the ceiling is higher at Michigan than it is at Utah. And he wants to go out as a coach at a program where he feels like he has a better chance to win a national championship. At Michigan, he absolutely would. He's done an incredible job, 177 wins, I believe, during his time in Salt Lake City. He is incredibly well-liked, respected. He's been incredibly successful. Everything about Kyle Whittingham is good. There's not a bad word that you can say about the guy. Passion, discipline, culture, every good word you've ever used to say about a football coach applies to Kyle Whittingham. Does he really feel at 66 years old, I've still got it, I just don't feel like I can do it here, and I could do it at Michigan? That would be the pitch if I were whoever the Wolverines are going to hire as their athletic director. Because if you're the administration there in Ann Arbor trying to sell him on come and save our program for at least a few years, you sell him on, hey, we're going to keep Bryce Underwood here, make sure he's taken care of. You can recruit at this level. We've got all these players. You'd be able to keep most of them. We feel really confident in that. And this is a program that just won 7 games in the regular season, then 9 games in the regular season. And we know at its peak can go compete for a national championship. That'd be the selling point. It's a pretty compelling one. Michigan is a top tier job in all of college football. There are not that many places that you say when they are run correctly and they are maximizing what that program's been able to give to this point, you can go win a national championship. But Michigan is obviously one of those places. Maybe Kyle Whittingham feels like, yeah, Utah is not, but I didn't want to leave on a 5-7 year. But again, the phrase pursue other coaching opportunities is very vague. So we don't know exactly what that means. But it's not being included in the reports for nothing or by accident. Maybe he just wants to consult. Maybe he wants to go be an assistant in the NFL. I'm sure he'd be able to find an opportunity up there. He's a darn good football coach. But given the situation at Michigan, at the very least, the timing is suspect. That it would happen right now. Why didn't he announce this a week ago? He knew what the bowl game fate was. Why didn't he announce this once they won their 8th game? Well, that would have felt a little bit strange. Why not announce it right after they won their 10th game of the year? Hey, I'm going to retire. I'm going to coach the bowl game, and then that's going to be it for me as the University of Utah head coach, and he rides off into the sunset. Why now, after all this has gone down? It makes you think, makes you wonder. It makes me wonder, that's for sure. And if I'm Michigan, look, my number one home run hire would be Kenny Dillingham. If he says no, I don't know, call Marcus Freeman in Notre Dame, because, I mean, that whole thing's a completely different mess. But I think Marcus Freeman's pretty locked in Notre Dame. And then I'd call Jed Fish at Washington, most likely. And I'd say, what's your interest level there? Because notice that Jed Fish hasn't signed an extension yet. But if you're making a short list currently of 5 candidates to be the next head coach of the Michigan Wolverines, and you're the administration in Ann Arbor, I don't know how Kyle Whittingham wouldn't be on the list if he's still open to coaching, because that is, for those of you watching on YouTube, the breaking news that I alluded to in the title and the thumbnail of this show. Because Kyle Whittingham retiring, ordinarily, I would not have hopped on and done a show. Because frankly, we knew that was going to happen. Coach the Vegas Bowl, win it, 11-2, leave the program in a really good place with plenty of positive momentum going forward and a really good coaching staff and also a good roster. That would feel very Utah. That would be work in silence. Nobody's paying attention as much as they maybe should. But when you got that little detail in there, man, I just wonder. Let me know your thoughts in the YouTube comments below. Hit me up on Twitter at @LockedOn_CFB or at @SMcLaughlinCFB. Speaking of the Big 12, they're going with the private equity, and I get it. First, this episode brought to you by Rugia. Let's talk about something most men don't bring up, but absolutely should. Stress from work, money, life, it doesn't just switch off at night. And when it shows up at the worst possible time, Rugia Ready is designed to help you take back control. Rugia Ready is a next-generation prescription treatment created to support both the brain and the body, so you can feel present, confident, and ready when the moment matters. Rugia Ready combines 3 clinically proven ingredients in 1 mint that dissolves under your tongue so it absorbs fast. You connect with a board-certified doctor online. Everything ships discreetly to your door. It's easy to understand why over 150,000 men have already made the switch. If you've been thinking about taking the next step, now's the time. Head to rugiet.com/lockedoncollege. That's RUGIET.com/lockedoncollege to get 15% off your order for a limited time. Rugiet Ready. Feel present, feel confident, feel ready. If you think you're ready to put your football knowledge to the test, FanDuel is the place to do it. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game. You're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment, everything is there on FanDuel. And the college football playoff, if you're excited to watch it and you want to make it even more exciting, FanDuel is the place to do it. If you see all the bowl games that start on Saturday. Washington plays Boise State in the LA Bowl, the last one ever. Do you want to bet on it just to make it worth watching in your view? Well, FanDuel is the place to do it. Point spreads, money lines, point totals, it is all there. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. So Ross Dellinger of Yahoo Sports reports that the Big 12 is nearing a deal with Redbird and Weatherford Capital for a cash infusion of as much as $500 million to schools, as well as striking a strategic investment partnership with the firms at the league office, sources tell Yahoo Sports, end quote, from the tweet he sent out earlier today. So I understand where the Big 12 is coming from here, because I think there will be plenty of fans out there that'll see this particular announcement and think it's the beginning of the end. College sport. And look, there have been a fire hose spraying of changes to college football in the last several years. So those that feel like it's too much too fast, there's too much to handle, you're getting away from the actual sport and what makes it great, I get that. I really do. On the flip side of the coin, this could be a great thing for the Big 12. Could be absolutely great. And I think Texas Tech has provided the blueprint. Who is the only Big 12 team in the playoff and the champion of the conference? Yeah, Texas Tech. And how did they get there? Here, let me give you a YouTube comment. Classic trope at Texas. The best roster money can buy. Give me the roster that's free. It just isn't. So you might be uneasy about what these private equity firms are going to bring to the table and how they could change college athletics. I don't think you're wrong for being worried. You're just stuck between a rock and a hard place. Because if your options are create an unknown by introducing an outside entity that can now influence college athletics with money directly, or be at a significant financial disadvantage compared to the other conferences that you're competing against, there's no good outcome there. There just isn't. The Big 12, obviously, given BYU snub in the college football playoff, is fighting a perception problem. They have been for quite a long time. And some of that does indeed stem, whether you think it should or not, this is the reality, from the recruiting rankings. Because the Big 12 doesn't recruit the same way that schools in the Big 10 or SEC or Notre Dame are able to. And that can influence people's perception of the league. I don't think that's entirely misguided. I think it can definitely go too far and be improperly applied. But the Big 12 has not won a national championship in a hot minute. They went there with TCU and weren't able to compete with Georgia. Why? Well, Georgia was really, really good. You know why? Because they were putting more money into their roster than TCU was, who was an incredible story and a great football team. But eventually, there was that team that just had more. So the Big 12 looking around and going, well, if we're going to get the best recruits and try to give ourselves some benefit of the doubt brand bias when it comes to playoff selection, and also be able to get better players across the conference on average and increase our recruiting footprint, yeah, money's how you're going to do that. It's not the only thing, by the way. It does not automatically give you a level of success that you desire. It does give you a better opportunity to get there. And even if it makes you a little bit uncomfortable to hear me say names that you may or may not have heard of, like Weatherford Capital and Redbird, I hadn't heard of them before today. Certainly have now. Certainly will going forward. Even if that makes you uneasy, the alternative is to just accept that you're going to be a second-tier conference. And look, I do not believe currently that the Big 12 is as far away from the football product on the field, from the Big 10 and the SEC, as some people would like for you to believe. I do think it is fair to point out that they're behind. And that the one team that has gotten onto that level and appears to be in that class of teams, we'll see how they do in the college football playoff, is the one that's spending the most money. So if you've got the opportunity to give your schools more money and a better chance to go out there and compete with teams that are operating under media rights deals that have tens of millions of dollars more, money's just a reality. Got to find a way to deal with it somehow. Texas Tech found a way. BYU's found a way. What about everybody else? This is the Big 12's chess move. And I don't think that it's an incorrect or misguided one. Utah, of course, went down this avenue as well. You're either going to get serious or you're going to be okay going 9-3, missing the playoff and playing in the Outback or the Pop-Tarts Bowl. And you know what? I'm here for the Pop-Tarts Bowl every single year. It is just a lot of fun. But if your ultimate goal is to win a national championship, as a conference, you can't be relying on one team to go and get that done. You can't say, well, it's Texas Tech or it's going to be nobody else. Well, that's not you acting in the best interest of your entire conference. You got to look at the whole thing and say, how can we raise the floor? Well, here's a way to do it. I think the Big 12 is the third best conference football-wise in the country. They're ahead of the ACC in my view. If you want to catch up with the Big 10 and SEC, the Big 12, I believe, pays in the $30-ish million per year range from its conference media rights deals. The Big 10 and the SEC pay 75 to 80, and I think it eventually is going to go up to 90 as the deal continues to evolve. And you know, Oregon is actually a school that's not getting a full share right now. And what does Oregon have? Phil Knight and Nike behind him. Washington doesn't have something like that. Which program is ahead of the other? I think we've seen that in the results on the field for the last couple of years. So I get the risk, I get the downside, and it's a gamble, but at some point, you got to make a move to try and close the gap. I think that's what the Big 12 is doing here. So, speaking of gambles, Washington State hired its next head coach. First, this episode brought to you by Aura Frames. The holidays are officially here, which means gift hunting season is on. And if you want something meaningful, personal, and guaranteed to get a reaction, Aura Frames is the gift that delivers every time. It's not just something you wrap. It's a way to share memories because Aura isn't your average picture frame. You can preload the frame with photos before gifting it, so when they plug it in, the memories are already there. No apps to figure out, no setup headaches, just instant smiles. And if you're worried that it'll look too much like a screen just sitting on a table somewhere, you don't have to worry about that at all. I've seen these frames before. They look great. The photos are really clear. It's awesome the way they move through, and you can enjoy a bunch of different memories over the course of several minutes. And I'm telling you, the frames themselves look awesome. For a limited time, save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off Aura's best-selling Carver matte frames. Named number one by Wirecutter by using the promo code COLLEGE at checkout. That's auraframes.com, promo code COLLEGE. This deal is exclusive to listeners, and the frames understandably sell out fast. So order yours now to get it in time for the holidays. Support the show by mentioning us at checkout. Terms and conditions apply. Check out auraframes.com. For the third time in 3 seasons, Washington State fans will have a different head coach on the sideline. It was Jake Dickert in 2024, Jimmy Rogers 2025, and it will be Kirby Moore in 2026. This was not a move that I had heard a lot about. It was not a name that I had seen getting discussed a whole heck of a lot, and I think that is reflective of the fact that Washington State is making a little bit of a gamble, but is also making a smart and calculated move. So Kirby Moore, for the last several years, has been the offensive coordinator at Missouri, and he has had a lot of success. Their offense has been excellent running the football this year. Brady Cook threw for over 5,000 yards and a bunch of touchdowns in 2 seasons under his tutelage for the 2023 and 24 seasons, and he does have ties to the West Coast as well. He was at Fresno State from 2017 to 2021 in various roles. He was a GA at Washington for 2 years. He was at the College of Idaho as the wide receivers coach, and he played at Boise State as a wide receiver. He's the younger brother, actually, of Kellen Moore, who I don't think I need to tell you who that is. At least I hope I don't. Current head coach of the New Orleans Saints. So he's got a family connection to rely on for how to be a head coach. And yeah, the Saints stink this year, but Kellen Moore has been around the block for a little bit. Kirby Moore is not very old. He is in his mid-30s, and this is the first time he will be a head coach in college football. He's going to go and take over a job with a fan base that I hope is not too apathetic about the program. They don't want to be. They want to be excited, uplifted, and enthralled with what the football product on the field actually is. And this year, I think they were until their head coach bolted for Iowa State, which is a bigger and better job because of the world that we live in here. So going into the new World Pac-12, you're going to have a new head coach who's there for the first time at Washington State and a new head coach who's there for the first time at Oregon State in Jamarcus Shepard. Now, the gamble for Washington State, when you consider the other names I saw getting thrown out there, like Rick Neuheisel or Chip Kelly or Brent Vigen, the head coach at Montana State, Kirby Moore has not been a head coach before, and he hasn't even really been a coordinator for all that long. 2022, he was the OC and quarterback coach at Fresno State after Kalen DeBoer left, and he was under Kalen DeBoer as the passing game coordinator and receivers coach from the 2020 to 21 seasons, but he's been the OC and quarterbacks coach. Well, he lost the quarterbacks coach title. Don't know exactly why for this season, but he spent 3 seasons as Missouri's play caller. That's a pretty fast ascension. So there's a gamble there. When you are at a school like Washington State that does not have a ton of money, that does not have a ton of margin for error because of that reality, it can be really risky to take on a first-time head coach. Oregon State just went through this with Trent Bray. Trent Bray was a first-time head coach. He had familiarity with the program, of course, because he'd been the defensive coordinator, and actually got off to a good start, and then it just collapsed, fell apart, and was a complete and utter disaster. That's what can happen when you've got a first-time head coach who's learning as he goes, and you're at a program that doesn't have superior resources to everybody that you're playing on your schedule each year. Even going to the New World Pac-12, that's the case. One of the reasons Jimmy Rogers left for Iowa State, he's going to get more money for himself and for his assistant pool. So Kirby Moore is a risk in that regard. The upside, though, is incredibly real. Because maybe you're getting this guy and he's an absolute steal. And because you're giving him his first head coaching opportunity, the likelihood that he will bounce after 1 year again, I think is incredibly low. Incredibly low. Yes, he's been a fast riser. He's worked under some great head coaches, got the pedigree. Kellen Moore's brother, sure. He might not be the Washington State head coach forever. That might unfortunately be the new reality for Oregon State and Washington State, is they just might not be. If they've made a couple of good hires here, and these two feel very similar, they're both offensive passing game guys in their background. Shepard was the wide receivers coach at a couple different spots. They both bring that youthful energy to being a head coach that can invigorate a fan base. But yeah, if they have a lot of success in 3 years' time, they might not be there. But when you're a first-time head coach, no one's hiring you after one good season. Best evidence of that is Fran Brown. Went to Syracuse, 2024, they won 10 games. Beat Miami, I think it was, in their bowl game, or was it Washington State? I think it was Washington State, actually. They beat Washington State in their bowl game, and they won 10 games. That's a huge deal at Syracuse. Okay, the Orange regressed this year because Kyle McCord didn't get another year of eligibility. Steve Angeli got hurt. It fell apart. They went 3-9. But Fran Brown, who came from the SEC, was on Georgia's staff, went and won 10 games in year one, and he didn't get hired in the coaching carousel. From that angle, I think Washington State is making a safe move. Because if you hire somebody like a Brent Vegan from Montana State, who I'm sure they considered because he's a really good coach, or Tim Polasek, I know he signed an extension in North Dakota State. Maybe he felt like you could have pulled him away. But that might have felt like Jimmy Rogers 2.0, where because he's been a head coach before and he's got a strong track record and might have been considered for Power 4 jobs anyway, if he comes in and has success, makes a name for himself, he could bounce after 1 year. I don't think there's any chance that both Jamarcus Shepard and Kirby Moore leave their respective posts after 1 year, even if they have success. Because amidst the craziest coaching carousel that I've ever covered here on the show, have you seen Kirby Moore's name? Did you see Jamarcus Shepard's name anywhere on those potential lists of targets? No, because the big-time programs are not going to hire a coach with that little experience because there are other options available. So these guys are in a position to build up their own brands, yes, and potentially leave one day, but that doesn't happen overnight. That doesn't happen in 1 year. If you do what your job is as a university and as a fan base to support these head coaches, I think both will be there at least 2 years, probably 3 or more. And there are a lot of similarities between their career trajectories and taking their first head coaching jobs here. It's not the easiest situation to walk into. It's also not impossible. I think both jobs are better in the New World Pac-12 than they were relative to the rest of the schools they were competing against in the old Pac-12 when you had Oregon and USC and Washington and Utah to go up against. Well, your path to winning in this version of the conference is going to be significantly easier. So the risk, first-time head coaches, yep, there's always a roll of the dice. But the upside is these guys can't have an eye to their next job for at least several years. And I think that's what especially Washington State fans are really looking for, because they got burned by Jake Dicker and they got burned by Jimmy Rogers, and they want someone who will stick around. And I think that he's going to do that at least for a little while. Can't promise anything in the long term. But nobody was trying to hire Kirby Moore at the Power 4 level. Other Group of 5 coaches could come calling if he has success. But at that point, when you've given him his first head coaching job, I would hope, and you never know, you can never guarantee anything. I would hope and think that he has some sense of loyalty to Washington State and that he wouldn't make a lateral move. The only reason he'd do that is if he's not well supported. So that's what it comes down to now. So I'm really intrigued by the hire. I think it's good. There's some risk, but there's some serious upside as well. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. And until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.